I do want to continue with this passing attack because why Oregon is so effective. It's honestly, I think I'm the most intrigued with how Penn State's going to handle Kenyon Sadiq. I but I let off with DeCorian Moore and Malik Benson as well. So it's kind of a pick your poison situation, right? Kenyon Sadiq, I think if he continues to develop this way, continues to play this way, the athleticism's off the charts. That is a second round at a minimum. I think I'm being generous there. I do expect him, I don't want to, top 10 pick, top 15. I don't want to over exaggerate, right? I want to be nuanced about this, but I do have that expectation for Kenyon Sadiq that he should be a first round NFL draft pick. So that's just one matchup. And how does Penn State contain him? Well, Zach Wheatley, that's going to be extremely important. That's going to be that free safety matchup where Penn State, Jim Knowles, they are going to try to match up Zach Wheatley primarily, and that's the battle. This is one of them. Zach Wheatley versus Kenyon Sadiq, and then, honestly, DeCorian Moore versus A.J. Harris, or A.J. Harris versus Malik Benson. Whoever's going to be that true wide receiver one in Penn State versus Oregon, it's A.J. Harris versus one of those two wide receivers. Obviously, I think most of us would agree that DeCorian Moore is going to be a better wide receiver long-term than Malik Benson, but broadcasters point this out. Dante Moore and Malik Benson have said, hey, we're good friends. So for the time being, you could make the argument that Malik Benson is the wide receiver one, the main target for Dante Moore and this Oregon offense. But you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with either of them. They have a pretty even workload to this point. Benson, 11 catches. DeCorian Moore, 9 catches to this point. But the yardage is fairly similar, 161 to 144. Like I said, it's just kind of, pick which pass catcher you're going to primarily defend against. And that's where Penn State's going to be up to the challenge, is going to have to be up to the challenge of it, because you don't really get the luxury of, okay, well, we're going to shadow one player and we're going to leave safety help over the top. No, it's going to be a lot of man-to-man coverage. This is what Oregon wants to do. This is what Will Stein wants to do. And it worked last time Penn State played against Oregon in that Big Ten championship game, where you isolate a Tez Johnson and you get him in one-on-one favorable situations. But A.J. Harris is a really good cornerback. So the same praise that I give for Kenyon Sadiq, I had the same thought process for A.J. Harris. I don't believe he'll slip past the second round. And I do believe that he will be a first-round pick if he continues this trajectory. Elliott Washington, Davian Collins, that's the matchup that it could be potentially consequential for Penn State, where you have Malik Benson and A.J. Harris lined up on one play. Okay, Elliott Washington and Davian Collins. I expect to see more of Elliott Washington. I group them together because they're in a starting quarterback battle still for that CB2 spot behind A.J. Harris. That is where that matchup for Penn State could be pivotal. I like grade on grade, elite on elite, which is why I say Zach Wheatley and Kenyon Sadiq or an A.J. Harris and a Malik Benson, but it's that second wide receiver option versus Elliott Washington, who's truly not a proven starter yet because he's still in a starting battle. Or is it Davian Collins? I am expecting more of Elliott Washington because in a game like this, it demands better pass coverage. Elliott Washington is the better pass defender than Davian Collins. Collins is, there's not a sizable gap, but who's better more often than not? It's Washington. Who's better in run defense? I would easily argue Davian Collins. Much more physical, has very aggressive in the right way. He's not egregious. He doesn't go over the top. He doesn't draw penalties, but he's physical. He's got an attitude to him. Whereas there's more of a finesse to Washington. He's faster. Washington's one of the fastest players on the team. You're going to need him out there quite a bit. So Zion Tracy's important in this game as well for Penn State. That defensive back trio of A.J. Harris, Elliott Washington, and Zion Tracy primarily going to have their work cut out for them for Oregon's pass attack. And then Kenyon Sadiq, to go back to that, Kenyon Sadiq had multiple touchdowns in that Big Ten championship game. Oh, I remember. So Kenyon Sadiq is going to be a focal point, to say the least, especially if Penn State's defensive backs are winning more often than not on the boundaries. That is where Dante Moore is going to look to. And Sadiq is more than just that check down, that safety. He can have the explosive plays too, even though the stats will not jump off the page initially here, because I don't want Penn State fans to be mistaken and say, well, Why are you hyping up Seyko when he only has, 5 receptions to this point in the season? That's just because there hasn't been the necessary volume. You're able to distribute the football a little more. You're going to see Oregon's passing attack really condense where they don't have the easy luxury to say, we'll throw here, we'll go here, we can go there. But they're going to focus more now on their stars. Okay, so that's a lot about the offense. I do want to get to the comments section because that's why we do the live shows, right? To bring you all into it. And we'll get this conversation rolling, then flip it over to Oregon's defense too. Let's go Ducks. So I'm glad we have the Oregon audience here. There we have it. We can run the ball on them for sure. Get to that in just a moment. We better win this game, and better yet, a national championship, because there will probably be another perfect storm for us. And it could be raining on the whiteout game, right? Could be raining, interestingly. The weather's been so great in Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden it's supposed to rain all this week and could potentially, I don't think it's supposed to be a downpour or anything, but weather could be a factor, could potentially be a factor. Again, anything could change. We're a week out, right? Penn State's run game will be key to beating us as an Oregon fan. Yes, it will. As I talk more about the offense and what Oregon can do and score at will and explosive plays, you want to keep that on the sideline. And how do you do that? You run the ball effectively. You establish 8, 10, 12, 15 play. Can you do that? Can you establish a 15 play drive? If you're Penn State, they would like to do that. 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. Okay, Oregon's selling out for the run. Tight end dump off in the flat. Drag route from Trevor Pena in the slot. But just chip away. And that also gives your defense a break to, hey, chance to recalibrate, catch your breath, because Oregon's go, 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 go. It's the way that Oregon operates. And that's why Penn State is adjusting to the 4-2-5, because it's not only, Washington likes to, go spread. Same with a USC. I'm not going to include UCLA in this conversation anymore. They're not part of that transition over to the Big Ten, and they're not part of the merger anymore, right? But that's the thing, is that Oregon's going to want to go tempo, and especially if the weather's nice, nicer, put a lot of pressure on Penn State to go, punch for punch with them. And that's the type of game they want to play. Oregon does not want to slow this game down. Penn State does. Penn State does a ton. Dante Moore does a slow spin move when he is trying to escape the pocket. Might get ugly. So I didn't talk about this with Dante Moore, and I should have focused on it a little closer to the top of the show, but I'm glad we brought up Moore again. Moore is not a dual threat, but he's mobile. He can move. I would not describe him as nobody would, right? But he has subtle speed to him. He has escapability. Escapability is extremely important when you are not a true dual threat quarterback. He can maneuver outside of the pocket, avoid the rush, get 10, 15. Saw him against Oregon State. What was I think the play was, it might have been even 30 yards or so. It was a big explosive run for Dante Moore. And those are the things that he can do. So he's not a speedster. He's not going to be, this isn't going to be an option read type of situation, but that mobility it's the vision to see, okay, the pocket opened up here. I have an escape lane here. I can run here. It is necessary and I put a post out about this. Obviously not everyone's going to agree. That's fine. Defensive ends are going to be important for this containment. Okay. Deny Dennis Sutton, Zariah Fisher, Chaz Coleman. Chaz Coleman is going to have his work cut out for him, because this is where you test the discipline of a true freshman. Can you contain when you're just rushing upfield and you're just trying to get to the quarterback by any means necessary, and you overextend on that play? Dante Moore will cut right underneath and go where you vacate that space if you are not conscious as a freshman defensive end. So Chaz Coleman's got to stay disciplined if we're talking from the Penn State point of view, but trying to focus on what Oregon, right? First impressions of Oregon from the Penn State point of view. So Moore is mobile. Moore can move. Not a statue quarterback, not expecting him to be. Defensive ends are going to have to contain. Sometimes a quarterback spy will be necessary. Do I like the idea of a Tony Rojas or Amari Campbell being taken out of coverage? Not routinely, but on select situations, just to change it up. Just to change it up. When I'm watching that Oregon State game and I just see how easy it is for Moore to maneuver, it's like, you got to do something. Okay. You can say, hey, defensive ends, be conscious, stay home, that kind of thing. Be aware of it. Easier for for the likes of Dennis Sutton, right? He'll be on top of that. But in the case of, if Moore is able to escape, sometimes it is not a bad idea in select situations to say, Tony Rojas, follow, just be that middle defender, be in a bit of a zone, but you follow Moore with wherever he goes. So you're not even taking him out of coverage. You're being conscious of what Dante Moore can do while defending the middle. It's okay. You can do both. I'm not saying you mirror him and you say, but right? You run with him, you watch him, and you see him start to step up in the pocket, boom, you close. Okay? That's my argument when I say, hey, you got to spy him. You got to do something because he's not a statue. He's not just going to sit back in the pocket all day. He will extend plays. You have to go get him. He will go get those yards if you let him.